Welcome to FinTech Impact. This podcast is an exploration of the financial technology world, interviewing different FinTech entrepreneurs about what they do, their story, and what their impact is on consumers, incumbents, and the industry as a whole. Here's your host, award-winning financial planner, university lecturer, and writer, Jason Pereira.
Hello and welcome to FinTech Impact. I'm your host, Jason Pereira. Today on the show, I have Kyle Kemper. Kyle is an author, thought leader, consultant, you name it, in the crypto space, who has worked with several players in the blockchain space. Most recently, he has authored a book called The Unified Wallet that talks about the future of being able to put all your currencies into one unified wallet. Easy name to guess. So with that, here's my conversation with Kyle.
Hello, Kyle.
Hello, Jason.
Thanks for coming on.
Great to be here, buddy. Great to be here.
Yes, good to see you again. We met at the IFP conference, which was also an episode of the podcast. Anyone wants to look at that, by all means. But Kyle Kemper is a crypto enthusiast / author / thought leader in the space. And we had a great conversation on stage, and I wanted to basically revisit that and expand on that. So thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure. We really had a good, I thought that was kind of an eye-opening morning we had at the Casino de Lac Me.
Not the slots, though, but yes. So Kyle, tell us about you and what it is you do.
Sure. So, I guess since like 2013, I had my kind of Bitcoin awakening. And then since then, I have been a relentless enthusiast, ambassador, evangelist, student, teacher of this technology and the space. I've worked with a number of exchanges, some social payment platforms. I'm deeply involved with the Blockchain Association of Canada, which used to be called the Bitcoin Alliance of Canada. I advise a number of awesome projects within the space. I like to generally just help people. I attend kind of conferences and events and kind of activations around the world around crypto, but also expanding out beyond that. And most recently, I released a book called The Unified Wallet, Unlocking the Digital Golden Age, which is available on Amazon, which is it's kind of like a visionary, maybe a little bit prophetic piece about what's possible when we have a single place to store all of our keys and digital assets and digital funds. Happy to dive into all that.
We can definitely do that. So before we get there, tell me about your history and how you came to be involved in the crypto sphere.
Sure. So, without going too long, I'm a Canadian. I was born in Ottawa. Half my family was kind of political, and the other half was kind of business. My father was a real estate agent and owns restaurants in Ottawa as well. I went to Dalhousie University and studied business and finance and entrepreneurship, marketing, a little bit of delving into philosophy and law as well. After that, I worked in venture capital with BDC in their IT division, which was very eye-opening to the world of investments. Joined a company called Vayu back in the day, which was a spin-out of Research in Motion, or from some ex-RIM guys. And, we were building like BlackBerry apps back in the early days of smartphone wars. And man, it was so crazy. Like, we had this app called VPost that I was like, I really sunk my teeth into it. But from our phones, were able to capture voice, video, audio forms, like location. It was such a powerful tool. And that was one of the early experiences about working with a very engineering savvy team and the importance of product and branding and packaging, and ultimately learned some good lessons from that. Moved on after that, actually spun an app of my own out of that called Camera Plus, and then kind of got tired of, to be honest, I was like, kind of tired of the tech scene for a little bit, and all the computer work. I found it kind of isolating other than conferences. So I went and I changed gears and worked at the family restaurant in a kind of a serving and bartending role for a number of years, which just kind of like put me out there and forced me to communicate, and really helped improve my communication skills and also see how the world of the service industry worked. And it was through that someone kind of came into the restaurant one day and started talking about Bitcoin. And I was really curious, and I just listened and listened and listened. This man had all the answers. And he kind of triggered me on it, and I started working with him, actually. In the end, it turned out that he wasn't the most legitimate individual, and I parted ways from him.
Fair enough. Now, little did he know that he was talking to someone who had your kind of background and who was waiting on him. So quite the serendipitous.
Yeah, it was kind of hilarious. But every kind of gold rush attracts snake oil salesmen, and I would pin that man up to that. And I, separated myself from that and really believed in the technology and what was there. And we'd put a Bitcoin ATM in the clock tower on Clarence Street in Ottawa. And I remember one day my phone rang, and it was the aide to Senator Gerstein, who was the the chair of the Banking, Trade, and Commerce Senate Committee, the BTC Committee. And they were doing a study on digital currencies, and they wanted to come in and see how the Bitcoin ATM worked. They wanted to do a field trip. And I was like, you know what? I can just bring the machine to you. It wasn't a very big machine. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. We'd love that. We'll give you 2 hours. Like 2 hours.
What am I going to do in 2 hours?
2 hours. Then word got out that I had 2 hours of this. And all of a sudden, Larry O'Brien, the former mayor of Ottawa, reached out to me. He was part of CA Vertex, which was Canada's largest exchange at the time. And then I had Siba Wan from BitAccess, who had made the ATM itself. And we also had Victoria Van Eyck, who had been my kind of partner, and we were calling the Bitcoin Strategy Group at the time. So the 5 of us showed up, and we did a transaction on the ATM. We had Joseph David Toth of CA Vertex explaining the way the exchanges work. It was pretty interesting because the Senate had been studying kind of Bitcoin for like 6 months, and they never had actually seen a transaction or seen how it worked. So we just showed them. I was like, look, Victoria, here's a $20 bill. Can I buy $20 worth of Bitcoin off you? She's like, certainly, show me your address. I showed her my address. Gave her the $20 bill. She sent it. It was like, boom. And everyone was just like, whoa, that was it. And notice there was no accepting of this money. There was no, it's a mailbox for money. Put it in, it's done. So, after that was a really awesome event. And then I went up working with CA Vertex for a year and a half. They got sold to CoinSetter, which then got sold to Kraken. So I worked with all those different organizations. I also worked at that same time with a company called ChangeTip, which was an incredible solution that allowed you to send Bitcoin over Twitter and Reddit and in text messages. Another engineering kind of case, and one of those lessons from the past.
You're a little bit ahead of the curve there.
A little bit ahead of the curve. It was so awesome, but had it just with ChangeTip, I really believe that it was in the name, and a name can really kind of create lots of assumptions. Just the word tip in the name inferred that it was some sort of gratitude service, when truly it was a Venmo killer. It was crypto Venmo, social payment platform. Yeah, it's unfortunate. And then ultimately they kind of got acqui-hired by Airbnb, and one of the most engaging and active platforms. Today's Giving Tuesday. We had this whole Tipping Tuesdays things. Every week we'd go out and we'd spray little bits all over the world and give people and reward people for their good acts by giving them Bitcoin simply over Twitter. There was there was the Nepal earthquake. We raised I think something like $9,000, which at the time was 26 Bitcoin for the Red Cross, because someone at Red Cross had set up their account. It was super easy. It was super hype. And then, I don't know, just being around and being kind of present and listening and active. I've been advising a bunch of companies. One company that I'm really fond of is called Data Wallet, based in New York, and we're looking to allow individuals to basically reclaim control of their data and earn from it without exposing it, which is really interesting.
So that's interesting. So you're talking about some sort of big data play that monetizes at the individual's ownership level versus at the aggregator.
Indeed. And reclaim.
That's a dream.
So tapping into all your different sources, because they're disparate, and becoming an aggregator, and then applying AI and deep learning on your own data to build out really strong profiles. And then you can be directly kind of compensated for your data or incentivized for it. So
instead of Facebook and Google reaping the benefits of it, the individual who's providing that data actually has control over it and monetizes it themselves.
Exactly. And it just adds the individual into this paradigm. To date, it's always been the AdSense, AdWords, and then the kind of the buyer. and like that, equation. But now we're able to put the individual into so like, I really believe like we operate in a world where there's a fair degree of like technology welfare. Like if you think about like Facebook is free, like, Google is free. And ultimately, like there's back end ways that they're able to earn off these solutions.
But free is a notion, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's not free. We are giving up something of value that is of little perceived value to the individual, but of huge perceived value, of huge monetary value to these companies, right? And this is one of the implications of Bitcoin that's always attracted me, was the ability to flip that model and allow the actual provider. Now it's going to be microtransactions. Like I'm not going to make $50 for releasing my data to X company, right? But if I basically say I'm willing to approve X, Y, and Z companies, and they target market me, but now the marketer ends up, some of that money ends up coming to me as opposed to just the aggregator, it's hugely valuable.
Well, I mean, like, in my book, I talk about this too. I talk about like, I don't know if you are a Shoppers Optimum member or not.
I am. Well, they merged with PC, right? So
I am too. And I remember and for years I hadn't been. And when I actually got the card, they scanned it, they issued it right away. They didn't ask for me any information from me right out the gates. No, I don't think they asked anything. And then I went and registered the card, and it just gave me a bunch of free form, open text boxes where, I'm putting all this data in, and then selectively kind of choosing their data. And this is the basis of their entire loyalty program. They rely on this data, and it's free for entry. It's terrible data, bad data, bad data. And there's also the personal subjective of what the aspirational me versus the reality me, which can lead to skewed data.
Absolutely. No, I will not admit to doing something wrong or something that I'm embarrassed by.
Versus when you actually have, and this is the data wallet kind of argument, it's look, we can just pull in your Amazon, we can pull in your banking records, we can pull in your Facebook, all these different interests, and we can just make the signing up for this super simple and super liquid and seamless, which ultimately will lead to better data.
Absolutely. I mean, and the better controls on that data. I mean, you said it right. You're aggregating it in one place, controlling it, and then basically determining which way to put it out there. And then therefore, we talk about monetizing it. So let's talk about your book, The Unified Wallet. Give me the Coles notes on the elevator pitch on what it's about and why it's important.
Sure. So the Unified Wallet, it is unlocking the golden age is kind of the tagline to it. And we basically the reason for it was because over the years of setting people up with wallets, I realized that, the digital wallets that we're dealing with, mostly money clips, and they're digital money clips, they allow you just to hold the cash. But everything that's in our wallet, and, there's this assumption, there's this belief, there's this understanding that we're going, our phone will turn into our wallet one day. And I'm well, okay, well, now that we have blockchain as well, Bitcoin solved, how do we have digital cash? But now blockchain technology as well is going to solve how do I create secure digital cards, if you will, for everything, to replace everything in my wallet, and all the different the implications for it are massive. But question is, where is this all going to lie? And what I'm trying to paint here is the need for an open digital wallet and showcase what's possible. So looking at things like open source design, looking at digital identity, looking at payment experiences, looking at healthcare applications, succession planning, the legal applications, voting applications that become unlocked with this. The ways that we secure this, the important considerations around security and redundancy, because if we bring all of this information into this one wallet or package or briefcase or portal or whatever you want to call it, that's certainly a lot of very sensitive data. So you want to make sure that is, has best of the best in terms of security.
As you said, redundancy, so you don't lose it, but also access rights. So, I mean, God forbid someone loses whatever tool or code was being used to access all their information. They shouldn't have to start from scratch again. And how do you solve that problem?
Exactly. And there's other considerations what do you do with children? They have birth certificates, they have things parents hold on to that. And then at some point, they'll become ready to hold their own digital wallet. I feel like this is something that we're going towards too, and it's very important that we have stewardship of this technology and like honorable stewardship and inclusivity by design. Because if this is done in a deceitful manner, it has a very kind of dystopic potential to it.
Absolutely. I mean, and not just that, I mean, even the proprietary manner, right? So the first thing I thought of was Apple Wallet, which works lovely. But the problem is, again, now I'm segmented to one ecosystem. For this thing to be truly universal, it's got to be open source, as you said. And on top of that, it's also going to, I mean, if you look at we can't allow individual companies to basically try to carve out their own proprietary version of this, because we're just going to lead to an absolute cluster of a mess, kind of like the chat situation in North America versus China. Everything's on WeChat in China. Everything's on Google Chat or on iMessage and
WhatsApp.
About five other protocols. Right? And you know what? You ask anybody, they're just like, can I just have one place that it all goes? But every other company's staring at each other saying no.
And I think WeChat's like an excellent example of like, the dystopic potential of it underneath a central authority that has omnipotent, omniscient views into the system. And even I even talked to some people from Tencent around this, and they're very interested as well in how do they solve that and break out of
that. Is a fine line to walk when you're working in China. Very fine line. I mean, everybody's probably already heard about the social crediting system, about how they're actually making that episode of Black Mirror come to life, where they're actually rating you based on every interaction you have and activities and actions and whatever. And yeah, again, kind of this is just another dystopic paradigm for them or dystopic platform for them if they want to go that way. So I agree with you. It's a matter of one of the most contentious rights issues right now around the world is data rights. And I think you'll agree with me on that. And we are still in the early innings of figuring this out around the world. So I have to think that blockchain is going to be both the potential solution and the potential curse if we don't do it right.
Yeah. And then when we have things like, multi-signature technology too, means, multiple parties are required in order to open data, which kind of solves a lot of the corporate things. And from the voting perspective, I think if we have the fundamentals of democracy stand to get changed if we can be able to vote from our phones.
Absolutely. Compliance ends up being I would hope participation ends up being a lot better than 50% if that's the case.
And the informed voter. Like, how often have you showed up to the polling station and actually known like the majority of the people, the options?
I love election day because I find out about all these parties I didn't know existed in my area. Apparently, I had 3 different communist groups in my riding. So who would have known?
And at least having, and you're presented with them on the ballot, but other than that, you're not going to hear. Yeah, I think there's an opportunity for for a little bit more information around that. So
you do a lot of consulting into startups. How have you seen incumbents in the ecosystem or in the financial ecosystem dealing with this? Like, is it still at the stage of curiosity? Like, how much actual testing do you see happening?
So I think a lot of what type of incumbents, like which
financial industry. Let's talk about the investment, insurance, banking, that sort of, even accounting. What are you seeing in that space?
Well, I mean, I remember like listening to like the CEO of ATB Bank, who actually has become very progressive in terms of their innovation outlook and the work they're doing around digital identity. But I remember listening to them at a payments conference a couple of years ago in Calgary, and he was like, "We're not going to work with disruptors. Like, we have no interest in working with disruptors. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, we'll say we're going to, but we have no interest in it."
Well, that'll go on your tombstone. Continue.
And I remember I was like, at the time I was there, like, talking about the social wallet, which was my first kind of iteration around, it was taking ChangeTip and just putting a new face on it to leverage their system, but with a different brand, and just focusing on sending and requesting money. Like in crypto, like, God, I'm not going to get on that. But ultimately, like, I remember him actually coming up to me and being like, "Keep going. Like, you're not going to win this. You have no chance. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, you did a great job, but you're not going to win. Not going to happen." And I didn't. I finished last place on like some silly fintech, like on a pig kind of one. But he was like, keep going after this. So there is definitely a will towards seeing the system kind of like be disrupted and be kind of like changed. And I think the incumbents, are looking at this. It's very difficult for a large organization to be ahead of the curve on these kind of things, especially when you're dealing with proprietariness versus open source. Like, I was listening to someone from RBC at this event, and he was like, we are assembling a team of blockchain masters to help make the RBC the leading financial institution in the metaverse. I'm like, all right, sure, dude. It's like in my opinion, what you guys are doing is you're paying a bunch of blockchain developers huge salaries, and they're going to half-ass it during the days. And then at night, they're going to be coding Bitcoin.
What they really care about. Yeah.
We're going to be working on the open source. And that's the difference between the open source kind of community projects versus proprietary ones. Sure, they're going to have to pay every single person as much as they can to get in there. But ultimately, what? So what are you going to do? You're going to put the RBC internal ledger on a blockchain? Okay, that's great. But why don't you talk to the Banking Association of Canada? And why don't you all?
No. They don't want to give up their proprietary. I know their vision. Every institution's vision to date has been very proprietary. They don't want to open up for various reasons, because if there's an open central repository, new disruptors can easily come into the space and have the same kind of data access they do, right?
Well, exactly. And that's why the banks don't need, Canadian banks have been fighting tooth and nail to stop API access towards their solutions.
Europe, I'm well aware. Yeah.
In Europe, it's mandated. It's required, and there's hacks. I mean, and you're seeing it. One of the companies, my friend Gerardo Trevino, he runs a company called Paybook. And so he basically aggregates a whole bunch of different financial sources towards creating the potential for radical transparency. He had a senator or a congressman in Mexico go radically transparent and broadcast all very corrupt potentially district. He went radically transparent and just disclosed everything because he believes in fixing the problems. But the way that these guys are doing it is they're just they're using scripts in a way that are logging in on your behalf to these sites to go pull information from them because the banks aren't giving you API access.
Yeah, and the ridiculous thing about that is it's actually a less secure way of doing things. It's actually a more cumbersome way of doing things for everybody involved, a worse experience for everybody involved. I mean, I've been on mint.com for God knows how long, since before they even came to Canada. And every time a Canadian bank moves a box to break the link and the access to that, the Twitter sphere goes nuts with everybody threatening to leave that bank. And it's do you think that these little games you're playing with us in terms of redesigning your website to make it harder, or recently the big play in Canada has been pushing out two-factor authentication, which, by the way, I believe it and it should be, but the problem is they're doing it for the wrong reason. They're doing it to create an obstacle, not for actual protection, because they want to stop all these data scrapes. But the true hypocrisy of it all is they turn around and offer data aggregation themselves. So it's okay as long as you give it to us, but if you take it and put it anywhere else, you avoid your fraud protection. Give me a break.
Yeah.
The joys of living in Canada, what can I say?
Well, and I just want from the wallet perspective, I was talking to some of the bankers about this as well. It was you are all trying, you guys want to be the wallet. Okay, you got Apple wanting to be the wallet, but now you want to be the wallet for everything too. And you look what SecureKey is doing, on their triple blind kind of collaboration between the banks and the government. It's interesting, but it's again, it's giving these guys a lot of credo and a lot of power. And I just want, if you can just allow some access, we'll be able to use the services. Why do I actually have to use your lame app? If I just had API access, I could still trigger these things from a really kind of cleverly designed app.
And under law, you have the right to your data. The issue is that law does not stipulate the format it needs to come in. And that's the loophole that they're using to basically not move forward. But, going back to one of your previous points about they're hiring all these Bitcoin ninjas or crypto ninjas to work within them. I mean, I'm sorry. First of all, you're still going to take direction from the top. which they don't know what the hell they're doing when it comes to this stuff, quite frankly. And you know what? I've never known anyone, especially a techie, to basically move into a bank and be inspired by what they saw there. So you think about the atmosphere and the inspiration you get working for somebody startups trying to change the world, like something blockchain. And then you go to work for a big six bank in this country. That's called collecting a paycheck. That's not called, really caring about the future. So you're right. They're going to spend their time working on their next gig and their side hustle and looking to get out when they can. Anyway, we beat up on them enough. So while we're having this conversation, we've seen a price drop in crypto sphere altogether. And we're talking when Bitcoin is now actually a sub 4,000 US. You and I are, I think, of the same mind on this. Share your thoughts in general about this drop off and the future in general.
If years ago when I got in, Bitcoin was, I remember selling an iPhone case for half a Bitcoin back in the day. That was pretty exceptional. We go through these ebbs and these flows. And, we saw some massive linear growth and this kind of pullback. It hurts, I guess you could say, but I think it's just necessary in order for kind of the next movement, kind of shakes things out a little bit. It's an excellent time right now to be getting in. Like a lot of people, it's so funny. When it's at $20,000, when it was at $20,000 a coin, everybody was rushing to try and get in. Like, oh no, we're not there. And now when it's at 3,000 after being at 20,000 or 3,700, people think it might just go so much lower. But honestly, now is a good time to be putting some of that into your wallets. And getting more exposure to it.
Yeah, so end of the story, we both believe that this is going to continue to exist and persist. And it's you're absolutely right. It was human nature. Everybody got in on greed and gets out on fear. And it's hilarious because as I deal with in my day job, what's the old rule on investing? Buy low and sell high. What does everybody inevitably do? The exact bloody opposite. And this is no different than what we've seen before. And I also, one of the things I have a frustration with is the people who think that a price drop invalidates the value of the entire platform. That's absolutely not the case. So a couple of questions to wrap up before we go. What, if you had one wish as to what you could change in your zone of the universe there, what would it be?
I had one wish to what I could change in my universe.
Yeah, specifically your realm of technology.
Well, I'd love to realize this unified wallet, to move away from paper receipts, to move away from oil-based point of sale machines, to increase feedback loops and better systems that lead to better service and product delivery. I'd like to see.
So basically, you wish your book would.
I'd like to see everybody having jammy packs on them.
Fair.
At all time, playing music.
So basically, we're talking about your book coming true in reality.
Well, I'd like to see the book come true, and that's something we'll be working on. Also, people to understand too that we're there's so much kind of consumption of FUD news all the time, and just turn the TVs off, guys. You're always going to come out depressed or angry or polarized from that. Understand that we live in a really good time. The world is a beautiful place. There's so much opportunity in front of us. We are in an age of abundance, and we need to rejig some of the basic systems and realize that value proposition.
Yeah, I agree with you. And if anyone doubts that, I think you just Google, charts that prove that this is the best time ever to live or something. And there's something like 20 charts that show everything from infant mortality to poverty lines to everything is showing that no matter how bleak you think it is now, there was no better time to be alive. So, but Trump. Yeah, well,
global warming. How are we going to fight this? I don't even want to get out of bed this morning.
Yeah, that's it. Well, if you don't get out of bed, you just wave the flag and, thank God for term limits is all I can say. So what do you think the biggest challenges facing the blockchain community are in general at this point?
Insidious agents.
The infinite number of scams that can be run in any one space. Yes.
The scams, the fact that there's a lot of brilliant people in this that have been dedicating a lot of, positive attention, and that, potentially the allure of deceit and dishonesty might come up and people start scamming. Yesterday, a friend sent me this message being do you know about this wallet? I think my friend lost about $20,000, lost all their crypto because of this sketchy Tether wallet. I was oh man. There's scammers that are out there that bring down everything and that are just in it for a quick buck. There's the crypto lockers that are, are hacking and making exploiting the super insecure nature of our digital lives right now. So, again, I come back to this wonderful book about the ethos that we're espousing, about retaking controls of our keys, about securing our identities, about securing our privacy so that you can't have... Dude, somebody went into a Rogers store and presented a fake ID with my name on it to the agent there and swapped my phone number to their phone.
Yep, that can happen. I mean...
Thankfully, I was aware. I even warned Rogers that this would likely happen. And they're like, okay, don't worry, Mr. Kemper. Everything's going to be just fine.
Yes. IA sitting in a call center and God knows where is going to make sure that every frontline sales agent knows to watch out for this scam.
Or some homie, a buddy who works on the front, there's a frontline soldier at a Rogers store, and goodness gracious, know where it was, but he's been corrupted, and okay, let's do this.
No, that's the other part. Exactly. What do you mean the minimum wage person is going to basically turn around and try to find a way to run a scam? Oh man, what a world. Okay, final question for you before we wrap up. What about this space excites you the most? I only ask hard questions at the end and make you think. That's it.
So I really believe that this space is going to free a lot of people from tedious, monotonous processes that have that hinder us and get us down. I think this technology will allow us, along with financial literacy and political literacy too, that maybe we can get rid of income tax one day soon.
You keep saying this. We were going to talk offline about what exactly you see is the mechanism for raising funds for social programming, but whatever. We'll talk about that after.
Well, I think the costs on everything can come down a great deal.
Substantially, yeah.
Through this, I think the medical system, healthcare costs can come down. We don't have to continue forecasting linear growth. Let's look at the exponential changes that happen all around us.
Yep.
There's many things, but breaking out of slavery, I think would be one great thing. What really excites me about this? Choice. The fact that we now have choice at base money. Choose crypto. I was born using Canadian dollar. I don't have to use it anymore. I have to use it for certain things, but I now have choice. The whole swath of opportunity, hopefully moving, I think, as part of a greater kind of convergence, just crypto, being one point of it, when we look at all the automation, when we look at deep learning, when we look at the AI, when we look at robotics, nanotechnology, the breakthroughs happening all over the place, and the movement towards an abundant society, there is an opportunity for us to move past a labor-based society where everything is measured in the amount of minutes or hours that we put into things. When a lot of we need to think a little bit differently about that.
Agreed. And it's interesting because this is an interesting solution for so many problems that comes about at an interesting time where we are dealing with things such as AI and automation that are going to permanently disrupt the way we work and what's valued in work as well. So interesting point. So Kyle, thanks again for taking the time.
Thank you, buddy. This was great.
Thanks, man. That was great
discussion, and I really appreciate it. I look forward to doing it again with you sometime soon.
Absolutely, and best luck with the book.
Well, thank you very much. It's on Amazon. It's called The Unified Wallet, Unlocking the Digital Golden Age. If you want to find me on Twitter, I'm at Kyle Kemper. On LinkedIn, I'm all over the place. Hit me up.
Yep, it'll all be in the show notes. Take care.
Okay, ciao.
So that was my conversation with Kyle Kemper. Clearly, we covered a lot of territory in that, a lot of big ideas. And quite frankly, that's because there is so much potential behind this technology that frankly, it's hard to overdo it when we talk about it. So with that, I encourage you to check out Kyle's Twitter feed and his works, and specifically his book. It's not the longest read in the world, so you should be able to tear through it pretty quickly. And with that, as always, I am Jason Pereira, and this is FinTech Impact. Until next time. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever it is you get your podcasts. Thank you.
This podcast was brought to you by Woodgate Financial, an award-winning financial planning firm catering to high net worth individuals and their families. To learn more, go to woodgate.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play, or find more episodes at fintechimpact.co.